Hi everyone. Today I'm joined by Agnes Mitchell, who is one of our tutors at Arise. She's tutored logic and debate this year with us, and in the coming year, well, very soon, she'll have a self-paced Gaelic for Families course coming out, and she is also going to be tutoring photography. So we're going to be discussing Agnes's other great talent, which is photography, and anyone who's familiar with Agnes will agree that she is an absolutely wonderful photographer. Your photography has been a real gift to so many families over the years. Even just the joy of seeing your photos of walks with your dog, it personally it livens up my day. I love when you've went out, you've put pictures on social media, and I get to see them. It just that beauty of them just sparks a little bit of joy. How did you actually get into photography?
I think as far back as I can remember, I loved photography. Like when I was a kid, I had a really rubbish wee camera. And I used to burn through film, um, just taking photos of random things. When I was a teenager, though, my brother, Gillespie, he got really into photography, so he had all the gear and all the lenses and filters and tripods. And he used to leave like photography magazines lying around, and I was always reading them. And he sometimes let me use his camera. And then when we got the photos back, he would like go through them and he'd totally rip them apart. So he'd critique all the stuff I was doing wrong and give me a lot of pointers. And that was really helpful, although it was kind of hard to get his feedback sometimes because he'd just be like, "Oh, just throw this photo out. It's not in focus. Like, there's no subject in this photo. What are you thinking?" So, um, he could be a bit brutal, but actually, that was very helpful. And then I just, I kept just constantly taking photos with my film cameras. Like, I remember in Bible college, just sending my my film away all the time, and I would get doubles back and I'd give them to people. Like, because I was always taking a photo of people. People was always my thing. It was always the thing I was interested in. And then when I had my own kids, that's when I got really seriously into it because I'm like, they're changing so fast. I want to capture every single thing. So that's, I think, when I got my first like proper SLR camera. So it's probably still film at that point, I'm thinking. I can't remember. But yeah, and then I started to just I was always posting photos of my kids online and doing little photo shoots with them, putting them in little angel wings and like lots of cheesy things. But like a lot of people kept saying to me, "Are you a professional photographer?" I'm like, "No, it's my hobby." And they're like, "Well, I love your photos. Would you mind taking photos of my kids?" And I'd be like, "Okay." And then eventually, so many people were asking me to take photos of their kids that Dave was like, "You have to start charging because um, this is taking up a lot of your time." And then I was like, also investing in the gear, which is really expensive. So it just kind of grew. And eventually I officially started my own business and started doing weddings and mostly just family wedding, sometimes a bit of product photography, sometimes a bit of like business photography and stuff like that. But my passion has always been portraits. So even when I was a little kid, before I started photography, I was obsessed with people's faces. Like I always just used to love looking at people and trying to figure out why is their face different from their face. Like I just was obsessed with faces. I remember as a little kid.
That's lovely. My favorite picture of, I think of nearly all my children, keep this out of earshot for all of them, is actually when you took of Amy. So she's now 5. When she was only, I think she was like about 7, a week old, or maybe less than a week old. And she was lying on your couch, and you just came out and took a picture of her, and it is just, it captures so much of how I remember her feeling as a newborn. Now there's that you can there's a feel that you just each one of your children is just different, and this picture you took of this newborn Amy just really encapsulated it, and I absolutely, even when I look at it, it just all that memory of her as that newborn baby just comes flooding back to me in a way that my own iPhone pictures just don't really do.
I
Did
think
you
I know the photo you mean. I think I can see it in my.
did you teach photography in Canada?
Yeah, I did. I taught a lot of people photography. I end up tending to teach whatever I'm interested in. So yeah, I taught um I taught in-person courses and I taught online. Well, not it wasn't really online. It was more of an email correspondence course at that time. But yeah, I did teach a lot of people photography, and that's something I really enjoyed. And some of the people I taught actually went on to start their own businesses too. So
Wow.
that was a that was fun. I always like some photographers are really snooty about passing on their skills because they don't want competition, but I always love to like really support people and help them because I think that's it's almost like the best way to learn is sort of that what do you call it when a father passes on
Almost like an apprentice.
apprentice. I think apprenticeship is the best way to learn photography.
Mhm.
To like have someone who well, just comes alongside you and is willing to like point out the stuff you're not doing so well, but also like cheer on. Because I think a lot of people are very insecure about starting a business, or even if they have really good skills, they can often be like, "Am I good enough?" or all those kind of things. And I
Do you think
also
that's more, do you think that is more something with creative people that they feel more scared about stepping out, starting their own business and feel more worried about that kind of insecurity?
yeah, I would say so. Like I something I saw a lot is there's people who are really good at business and like marketing and like just really like brimming with confidence, but not necessarily very good photographers. But and they would actually do really well. But then the actual really talented people who maybe didn't have that kind of business sort of side to them, which creative people often don't, right? We're
Mhm.
often quite chaotic and disorganized. um, yeah, sensitive. So yeah, you would often see like amazing photographers. They didn't want to push themselves, so they actually didn't really um, get as far as people who weren't actually as talented but were willing just to put themselves out there. I
That's
found that really frustrating, but
Yeah,
that's the way it was
yeah.
and probably still is.
It probably is. I think you're probably absolutely right. It must be a real privilege to be invited into these precious moments of people's lives and been able to document them. How did you find this?
Yes, it was. Like I always found like being with a couple on their wedding day all day and like in the most nerve-wracking moments of their lives and like often the first one to congratulate them after they were married and the one who's there in the dressing room where she's like all like having her second thoughts and you're talking her through and like helping her father-in-law put his bow tie on and it actually really did make you connect with people really quite closely and I always felt very close to couples that I after I'd done their wedding even years later I'd see them I'd be like so good to see you or and often I'd photograph their first baby and so it was
Oh,
all the sort of highlights of their life and like even with family shoots you would often get to know people really well because I tend to do more location photography
mhm.
in people's homes or on their property or whatever so yeah and then like quite often there's been times where like someone has died even quite soon after a photo shoot and it's then you realize like how much those photos mean because people have like
Mhm.
there was one person and it seems like the first thing he did after his wife died she died quite young and quite tragically and she was they were a neighbor of ours and I had just done her maternity photos and her baby photos And I think like one of the first thing he did when she died was to message me and just tell me how much the photos meant to him. And it's kind of like then you realize like this is actually quite important.
Yeah.
like capturing, the beauty of a pregnant woman or her babies, or
Mhm.
like those precious moments that families have together. Like it actually means something. It's not just like I mean, it is a luxury for people, like it, because it costs money to get it done, but it can mean so much to people.
It's almost quite sacred.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of felt that way. Like I don't know if it's just all artists feel that way about their art, but you just I think as a Christian, because you really do celebrate family and
Mhm.
marriage and children, and I always try to put that into my photos, that like how precious those relationships are, and how precious marriage is, and you just try and like capture that. I think capture it differently when you
Mhm.
have that value.
There's you're also able to capture different people's personality. There's a picture I've got that you took when I had my last baby, and you came and visited, and you brought your camera, and you took just a selection of pictures, and there's one picture of Amy and Emily, so the next one up, and it looks so funny, the expression on their faces, but it's so profound because you've captured their unique personalities in such an amazing way. It's like when we look at that picture, we're like, wow, that is just them.
Ah,
And the whole composition, and it was again, it amazes me how you're able to do that. Because I can't. And you see other people's lovely pictures of their families online and they're nice and they're lovely, but that depth of being able to capture somebody's personality is missing. Um,
yeah.
so
I it's funny because I also struggle to take photos of my own kids because they don't, especially my boys really don't like having photos taken. So it might just be when it's someone they don't know as well. But I think you do learn like how to talk to people to bring out
Mhm.
the best in them, and kind of wait. Like I don't really like just cheesy smile photos necessarily. I kind of want to capture the like real emotion. So like I've kind of you kind of learn how to talk to people to make them relaxed,
Mhm.
and
Remember
just
when
wait for
people,
that moment, like not to just take the photo, but just to sort of hold the camera, talk to them, and then you kind of see something, and then you take the photo, not like just randomly.
you did a photo shoot with us as a family a few years ago, and you brought your oldest daughter with us to help with that idea of kind
Yeah,
of
he's
making
really good
people,
at
yeah.
making people laugh and smile.
So it was just very natural.
Yeah, yeah. She actually came to a lot of my photo shoots in Canada just because she's so goofy, and she could just she's very dramatic. So yeah, it didn't matter who it was. She could make them. She could bring out some emotion.
That's lovely. You're going to be teaching photography with our eyes after the summer. Can you tell us a little bit about the class?
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm if it's too big a goal, but I think my goal is really to give kids a foundation that they could, if they wanted to, go on to become professional photographers. So, and if they have sort of the eye and these skills, like there's no reason they couldn't start doing professional photography. So we'll be talking about manual using an SLR in manual mode, because until you can really use the different functions of a camera and have complete control over the lighting and the aperture and the ISO and all those things, you can't really, you don't really have the ability to like imagine a photo and then execute it. Like if you're using a photo in automatic mode, you're really at the mercy of the camera to hopefully get what you were wanting to do. But usually camera, it's not as smart as you are. So using a camera automatically, it's kind of hit or miss. Whereas I'm going to teach them how to get what they want by using manual functions. So we'll be talking a lot about lighting, because that's kind of the foundational thing, is understanding lighting. Once you understand lighting, you can take a good photo no matter what the location is. And then we'll be talking a lot about composition, so rule of thirds, positive, negative space, framing your subject, making your subject pop out by using like background blur, and how to get that background blur, like I have in my artificially in my video. Leading lines, those are all sort of composition things. And then we'll be talking about different types of photography and practicing different types of photography. So we'll probably do a lot of portraiture, because that's my favorite. But we'll also be doing product photography, so how to photograph objects to make them look good. Sports photography, so photographing something that's moving at high speed. Landscape photography, which when you live in Scotland, you have so much opportunities. Macro photography, so that's like photographing something very small. Close up, it's quite tricky to do, but it can produce some really cool photos. Then urban or architecture photography, animal photography, food photography, and then location photography. So they're going to have a lot of practice in different types of photography, but there's different little skills for each kind of type of photography that we'll be learning along the way. And then we'll talk about editing as well. So just even the basics of, you know, color correction and how to make a photo pop with just basic edits, and how to crop it properly and all those kind of things.
And very, very rich. What do students need to take this class?
So they need a digital SLR, and I would recommend a 50mm lens. So that's not a zoom lens. It's a very cheap lens, which is why I'm recommending it. Like you can often get it used for less than £50. But it actually takes really good photos. Because it's not a zoom lens, there's only one piece of glass. So that means the optical quality is really good. And 50mm is kind of, so there's no concave or converseness, it's just flat. So that means it's very clear. Even a cheap lens will be really clear and like crystal clear. And it also has, that lens has a wide aperture, so a big hole in the middle. So that means you can get really, really good background blur. So we'll be practicing different depths of field. So that means the part of the photo that is in focus. So often the difference between a professional looking photo and a not professional looking photo is the depth of field, and having the focus on the right thing. It can make such a big difference. So that's why I recommend that lens, because it's cheap, but it's very creatively versatile.
So if you don't have a DSLR camera and you can buy them secondhand, would you need to buy the lens separately, or do they come with a 50mm lens?
Yeah, I would just buy them separately. Usually, if you're buying a kit, like a body and a lens together, usually it's a crappy zoom lens that isn't going to take very good photos. So I would just buy a used body and a used, it probably will be fine to get a used 50mm lens.
What kind of price range would the used body and the used lens be?
So yeah, gosh, I'm so not like familiar with the market right now that I'm not quite sure, but you really like, I'm going to show some of my photos, and I'm going to show you my first wedding, which I actually took with a 50mm lens and a really rubbish body. And like the couple were just absolutely delighted with the photos. So the body really doesn't matter a lot as long as it's got the manual functions and as long as it's not really beat up. So the thing you want to check is the number of actuations, or I don't know if that's the right word, but the number of clicks on the how many photos it's taken. Basically, it should tell you that if it's a used camera, and I can't remember the number that you're really shooting for, but if you look up like how many actuations on a camera is a decent buy, then that's what you need to know. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. Most photographers go through a lot of bodies in their life, camera bodies. It's not physical bodies, but um, but they always keep their lenses. So it's if you're going to invest money, invest in lenses rather than. I mean, I do have some very expensive bodies, and they do make some difference.
The lens is the most important.
But the lens is more important.
Would you be able to show us what difference? So if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify, Agnes is going to be showing us a little slideshow of some of the photography she's done, and this will just give you an idea of how the difference that a DSLR camera makes, and you can see that on the YouTube upload for this podcast.
Okay, so this is my first ever wedding I did. So I had my 50mm and I had some kind of Rebel Canon body, which is very, very cheap body. And I think like the couple were delighted with the photos. Like they're not, the optical quality is not as good as my more recent photos because of the body. But I feel happy like with these photos of my first. Like I'm looking back and I'm like, these really aren't too bad.
They're beautiful.
So that would be macro photo there with the rings where you get
Mhm.
really close up. And there's very specific things you need to do manually to get those things in focus because it's quite hard. You couldn't do that with automatic.
You can see the reflection of the print actually on the husband's ring.
Oh yeah, that's true. I
It's
never even noticed that.
beautiful. And you
But you
can
see
actually,
the sorry.
as I say, you can see what you were talking about the depth of field with the
Yeah,
bride and
so
groom pictures.
where they have the two glasses together and they're blurred.
Hmm.
That was because I had that 50mm where I could do that. A little creative flair. And this is a recent photo I did. Some of you might even know these from the
Yes.
home ed community, but you can see the optical quality of this is a lot better
Hmm.
than these. So
Yeah.
everything's a lot sharper and more detailed. And that's because I used like I now have very, very good lenses and a full frame camera. So it's a lot of pixels. So it does make a difference in your gear, but not like it's still, I would say you can take professional level photos with cheap gear. This is another wedding I did recently up in Port William. And so this, again, you could not take this photo on automatic settings because of the brightness of the sky. If you did this automatically, the camera would naturally just darken those two down into a silhouette. So you have to kind of know what you're doing to get both
It's
the
a
sky.
beautiful photo.
Thank you.
It feels so atmospheric with the way the clouds and the composition of it and the mountains. I'm sure there's
Yeah,
you've got all these elements in this of the light, the composition, bringing it all together to be this beautiful image.
yeah, I really like this is my favorite one from the wedding. I really like having the sky, like detailed sky in my photos. It's probably kind of one of my hallmarks. I think it's really like there's something about setting humans against this sort of infinite sky that just kind of has this heaven earth connection for me. So you see it in a lot of my photos. Sky and people. This is another one. This is their engagement photo of these guys.
Yep.
I'm showing you this one because hang on. Sorry.
Don't worry.
So the sunburst in the middle,
Hmm.
You can't really do that with a camera phone, and it's to do with your aperture. So we're learning about manually setting the aperture. So um, when you have your aperture, like say you have your aperture on 16, you'll have 16 points on your sunburst. And if you have it at 22, you'll have 22
Oh,
points.
wow.
So there's a lot of creative control you can have with
Mhm.
using manual functions. And again, like you just know, like I just wanted the lighting right so I could kind of see their expression, but
Mhm.
um, just faintly. And you couldn't do that with an automatic. You don't have that much control.
Another thing with these with the one the back to the this one here, the engagement photo, I think there's something really poignant about this young couple on the cusp of getting married and the sun behind them and the idea of the hope of a new life together.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and the one with the couple with the mountains, again, it's the way you've composed it. There's a there's a poignancy to the sky, and it's like there's a bit of foreboding in the sky, but they're together, and there's this bravery in the way they've been, the way they're standing, the composition of the couple. That it's like together we're standing, and we no troubles will come, but we're in it together. And you can see that in
mm,
the way you've created these pictures, that they're not just, oh, take a picture, you remember your wedding or you remember you got
yeah,
engaged. There's a depth of meaning to these images which is
mm,
actually quite
yeah.
profound.
And just getting them to look at each other here like that, often, like you're talking about capturing their personality, but it's
Yeah.
often when people are looking at each other that you capture like their relationship, and because their faces change when they're looking at each
Hmm.
other, like you can see like Paul, he's got that little hint of a smile when he's
Yeah,
looking at
like this is my future bride and I
me.
love her.
Yeah, this is my son Elijah.
I love this picture of Elijah.
So this is actually this is an example of framing. It's just something we're going to be doing, but so I've posed him so he's got his hands in his photos because I love having the hands always say a lot about a person.
Hmm.
And obviously I've got the light right on his face. I've got him to close the eyes. He's a very contemplative person,
Hmm.
so having him with his eyes closed is quite appropriate. It's actually on a seesaw at a play park. So he's
Is that what that is?
yeah, so he's got his hand on one of the seats, and then I'm shooting like through um the circles of the equipment.
Huh?
And but I've got, because I'm using manual functions, I'm able to focus on him. If you're using it automatically, your camera would focus on what's nearest. So it would be this first ring would be
Yep.
focus, and he would just be a blur. So it just shows you again the usefulness of manual function.
You would never guess that was a seesaw. It's really industrial and kind of moody.
Yeah, yeah. It's all kind of, the blur kind of hides a lot of what it is. But I just like the framing.
Yeah.
So this was a family
Oh.
I took in Canada, and so what we're going to be doing is playing with angles and just trying to see things from a different perspective. So this, I actually climbed up a ladder and shot down on them as they were kind of resting in the grass, and we kind of positioned them in this sort of spiral, which is kind of a nice composition. But it's also, again, you see the relationship connections even with the dog. There's a hand on the dog. There's the couple are sort of looking at each other, and it's just like they're all enveloped together.
Did you make the grass kind of spiral?
I don't think I did intentionally. It was probably just the way it went um, when they were getting down. But the texture of the grass I really liked.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, nice.
And the colours really complement each other as well.
Yeah, the
Green,
brightness.
and then the blues and the clothes of the family, but then her cowboy boots just kind of,
Yeah,
I just, yeah, it's lovely.
yeah, yeah. And we will talk about a lot about getting a good background for your subject. This is a location, I would call this a location portrait on Skye. So the family are important, but so is the landscape. And it's kind of like that's their home. And you see a lot of it, a lot of the surrounding landscape because Skye is just so beautiful. And
Yeah.
anyone who lives there, the island is so important to them. They get so connected to it. So I like to just include a lot. So I like to include a lot of landscape and then zoom in and just try different sort of croppings because they all have a different effect on the feel of the picture.
Beautiful.
This is
Oh
just a fun
wow.
photo. It's a rainbow reflected on the road.
Hmm.
So, well, I like just trying weird things just to see how they come out, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, we'll just be talking about playing and
Abstract.
experimenting. Yeah, and abstract. Just experimenting with different things because often it's in experimenting that you get some of your best photos. That's another
Oh
landscape
wow.
guy, which the landscape photographer in me comes out when I go to Skye.
I've seen your Sky pictures and they blow me away. I love landscape photography. And
Mm,
yeah, Sky is just made for landscape photography.
it is. There are some really good landscape photographers on Skye that I follow, and their photos are just unreal. Like they must just get up early in the morning just to catch that first light, and
Mm.
they must be quite fit because they're always up hills and and they must have a lot of equipment too. So you have to be pretty strong, but
Yeah.
I'm not that strong. I don't think I could hike up hills with big bags of camera equipment. So this is macro
Oh,
photography, which I did a lot of. As a wedding photographer, you want to catch little details because people put a lot of work into the little details in their wedding, so you want to kind of
it's
capture
beautiful.
them. So I always would do ring photos, and they are really tricky. Like you probably don't realize until you do it that focusing close up on something is incredibly difficult because the closer you are to something, the narrower the depth of the field. You can see it if you look at the tablecloth. There's just like a centimeter that's actually in focus,
Yeah.
and the rest is just blur. So you really have to have a steady hand. And
When you're looking at like the little birds, although they're small, because you're zoomed into them, I'd imagine in relation to the depth, the field depth that you're photographing, they're actually quite big. Does that make sense? I'm trying to get because you're focusing in so small, but this is a 3D object, and you're all the bits that you want to have in focus.
yeah,
I'd imagine it'd be quite tricky.
yeah, it is tricky, but it is kind of like some people all they do is macro photography, and they'll do little like insects and like it can it can be a really fun aspect of photography.
I quite
But
like, I follow a couple of macro photographers on Facebook, and they do like tiny little fungi. Like
oh yeah.
like smaller than your fingernail fungi, and it's absolutely stunning. And then they'll do little bugs, and you can see their eyes, and it's almost
Mm,
take photography almost to a microscopic level.
yeah. Hmm.
They've got very posh and fancy um, cameras.
Yeah. I think that's the cool thing about photography is it reveals like the tiny details, but then you can do like the massive landscapes and just celebrate all of God's creation from
Yeah,
the biggest mountain to the tiniest insect. So um, yeah, and I think the other thing I think reason I think it's good to have photography skills is because it seems to be like one of the creative things adults bring into their adult life. Like we
that's
spend
true.
our whole childhood like drawing and painting and sculpting, and then when we become adults, we're just so busy that we often, unless you're really that's your passion, you often like stop doing a lot of those creative things. But most adults still take photos. So if you learn a little bit of skill, then you can put creativity into that, and um, and still be creative as an adult, even when you're very busy, and just have time to snap a few things.
Yeah.
This is a silhouette
That's
photo.
lovely.
It's actually my sister-in-law and her family.
I love the sky.
Yeah, I love this guy too. But I love silhouettes because it kind of strips away a lot of the distracting details, and you just really focus on body language that you maybe wouldn't notice if they were lit up. But
Yeah.
and also the connections, you can see how they're all sort of focused on the one boy who's
Jumping in.
breakdancing, or I'm not sure what he's doing. But it's just like the relationships, you can kind of pick up on them. Oh, this is one of my favorite wedding photos because this couple, they were a lovely Christian couple, and their wedding was just bucketing rain. Like, it was torrential rain all through their outdoor wedding.
Oh,
They were
no.
standing there with like umbrellas, and everyone like in their raincoats. But then when we went to do this photo shoot, the sun just came out and the rainbow came out, and I just managed to capture it before it disappeared. But
That's beautiful.
it just reminds me of how, like, the sort of rainbow after the rain, and the promises of, like, God is with us and their joy comes in the morning. So these are okay. So that's the end of my SLR photos. These are photos I've taken on my camera. So not my camera, my phone. So my phone, I bought my phone on the basis that it has a good camera. So it's a Google Pixel 8 Pro. So it has actually a very high megapixel camera, and it has a bunch of different lenses. And so I can take good photos, but I think the reason I can take good photos on it is because I've spent so much time on an SLR and I understand lighting really well. And I do have a little bit of manual control with even my phone. So this is photo took just a week ago of Zara at the forest. She was shaking all the water off her. And because, like, we'll talk about backlighting and how it's great to light up water and to light up hair and stuff like that. But just knowing, like, when something's going to look good, I think is important being a photographer, because I know what's going to look good, and because I've taken so many photos, I could see the light was hitting her in just the right way, that when she shook, it was going to look good.
And that's why when we all look at your smartphone pictures, we all like, she still takes the better photos than all of us with our smartphones, because you're bringing to the table all this additional knowledge. Whereas if I tried to take a picture of my dog shaking the water off, it would just look a bit meh.
I think a lot of it is just knowing what will look good, and then because you see it first and you're like, oh, that's going to look good, and then even with a rubbish camera, if the lighting's right, you can still get a good photo. But I did edit it as well, and a lot of it is also the editing, because I brought up the highlights so that so then you can see the droplets better. These I took with my phone. I keep trying my camera. So, and I was really annoyed because we live close to this forest, and every year there's this carpet of bluebells, and I usually do take my good camera, and I was like, I can't be bothered with the extra weight. And I've got so many photos of bluebells anyway. But when I went, I was just like, I want to take photos. But I was able to get some quite good ones in a way. But again, it was knowing a lot about how to do it, and that's because I know, like, you go close if you want some but you can get background blur. It's much harder to get background blur on a phone, but you can do it. You just have to go really close to things, and that, because you can use your aperture on a manual camera to do it, so you don't need to get close, but you can also do it by moving closer to your subject. So that's what I did in that top left one. And then I've just put that one of my dog there to compare the sunburst, like I was talking about earlier, how you can create a really cool sunburst with a camera. You can't really do that with a phone. It's just kind of It's
Yeah,
always a bit rubbish, the sunburst. It's not bad, but it's not really
it's
what I
not
would
like the other one.
know. And this I did with my phone again, just knowing which angle to use to get the backlighting on the water droplets, and getting in super close so I could get the blur as well. So we can do some creative stuff with the phone. But again, a lot of the knowledge I have came from using the SLR. This again is a camera, a phone photo that I took up at my mom's house in Beaulieu. And I was just walking through the field, and all the ice was like frozen in these kind of lines. And I was like, oh, that's going to look really cool in
But
a
the
photo.
composition there, beautiful. Did you then edit the picture afterwards, like
Yeah,
change the saturation stuff?
I did edit it, and that is like, it is a big part of getting a good photo, is knowing how to edit it, and like how to get the because some of the exposure in the sky probably changed in editing to get the darker sky, but knowing how to like the exposure to take it at so there still will be detail in the sky, I learned that through using an SLR, because you do have to lower the exposure to get detail in the sky, otherwise it'll just be completely blown out. And that's it.
Lovely. Those are beautiful. For those who are new to this type of photography and they've never used a DSLR camera, would they be able to come in completely fresh and take this class?
Yes, yeah, we'll be starting from scratch. So we'll be looking at the buttons on the camera and figuring out what they mean, and just experimenting with just the absolute basics. Because even if they already do know stuff, working on those basics is always a good thing. Like every photographer is learning about light all their lives. I would say it's not something you ever finish learning about, because there's always new things that you can find out. It just feels like light is an infinite
Yes.
subject, but just, and a big part of it will be getting feedback. Like I wouldn't be as bad as my brother,
I
but
was going to say that Agnes will not be brutal and on your child's confidence.
yeah, but I think a lot of the times you don't really see things in your own photos until it's pointed out to you, because you can just be oblivious to certain things, and then someone will say, look, this is your subject is not in focus. And that's one of the main things I tell I end up my feedback, it's not focus. Because you really need to train your eye to be able to see a sharp like picture. Like it's funny because I tell people, if you're doing a portrait, the eyes must be tack sharp. Like this is how sharp I want it. And I was like, in our co I'm teaching photography in our co class right now, and I was like, I'll find a magazine photos, and I showed them the photo. I'm like, that's not even sharp. Like there's blur there even in the magazine quality.
Wow.
So, but like training your eye is a long process, I would say, just to see. Like, and I'm showing them photos of harsh light and soft light, and I'm like, which one's harsh and which one's soft? And they were like, I don't know. And I'm like, it's so obvious. But like, and then I'm like, look at the shadow of the nose, and see how like crisp and clear it is on this one, and how blurry it is in this one. And they're like, oh right, that one's soft and that one's harsh. So they're starting to train their eyes to see different kinds of light. But and then eventually you'll be in a room with people and you're like, oh, the light on that person's amazing. And you just want to take photos, because whenever you see good light, it's like, I've got to take a picture.
So a lot of it is, there's so much in photography that most people are just completely oblivious to. Be able to.
Yeah, I think so. And then as you learn, as people point out, even like you might like, because some people actually just naturally have a good eye for composition or whatever. Like some of the students I've taught, the first photos they've sent me are like, they're amazing, and I'm like, but they haven't, this is them starting, and I'm like, they are just naturally gifted at seeing what looks good.
Mhm.
They don't. But it's not till I point out, look, you've got this leading line, you've got this beautiful framing, and they're like, oh yeah, I didn't even know. I didn't. I just did it sort of intuitively. But then, as you pointed out to them, then they can intentionally start
Mhm.
incorporating those things in.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Agnes, for your time. And if anyone is interested in the photography course, if you need some help knowing if you've got the right camera or if you're where to go and what to look for, please drop us an email at arise@arisehomeeducation.com and we will be able to send it to Agnes and she can reply with her knowledge and wisdom because I cannot. Um, so yeah, just any questions, please just fire them to us and Agnes will be able to help. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing the beautiful pictures with us. It was really great. Thank you.
Thank you.